everybody, it's Bramble and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be looking at 25 island theme ideas for your Animal Crossing island. Without further ado, let's get right into the video. The first theme we're going to look at today is Junglecore. This theme relies very heavily on landscaping, so that means lots of trees, lots of bushes and lots of plants. You're definitely going to want to use plenty of coconut trees for this island theme. You can also use sand paths to make your island look more realistic. Junglecore islands are typically set in either summer or during a rainstorm if you want to go for that rainforest vibe. The next theme we're going to look at today is the Castlecore theme. This theme can also sometimes be recognized as an elegant theme. It relies very heavily on the castle wall items, which can be purchased from the Nook stop. Statues and artwork are also a huge part of Castlecore. They add to the elegancy of it. It's also generally a good idea to keep lots of flowers and plants to make the place feel lush and full. Next we have Cottagecore, which is a theme which relies very heavily on plants and landscaping. It's pretty similar to Forestcore in that it has a lot of trees and greenery. This theme also tends to have a lot of natural colours such as greens, whites and browns. These islands also typically tend to be set in either spring or summer. Next we're going to be looking at Forestcore. This is perhaps one of the most natural themes you can go for. It relies heavily on lots of terraforming and landscaping, so plenty of trees, plenty of plants. Generally speaking, Forestcore relies heavily on greens and natural tones. The next theme we're going to look at today is Desertcore. So this theme relies very heavily on minimalism. You're not going to want to have too much going on in your island, but you are going to want to have sand covering the majority of your island to make it look more natural. You can also add some coconut trees to make it look more realistic. And if you like, you can use items such as the pyramid statues to go for a more Egyptian feel. The next theme we're going to look at is a rural Japanese theme. This is one of my personal favorites. This is Japanese meets overgrown town vibes. For this theme, you're going to want to have a lot of trees and forestry going on, but you're also going to want to have lots of clutter. This can be trash bags, bikes, or street lights. You can also divide up areas using road paths, or you can use the natural dirt paths. The next theme we're going to be looking at is Kidcore. This theme is very light and bright and pastel coloured. Kidcore is slightly more relaxed than other themes, and it allows you to use items that you perhaps wouldn't usually use in other builds. However, the main goal of Kidcore is to achieve a colourful island with as much different colours as possible. You can do these in pastel colours or you can do them in primary colours. It's entirely up to you. The next theme we're going to be looking at today is an urban city theme. This theme is very organised and well structured. It's usually pretty clean looking unless you want to go for a dirty city look. There also tends to be more structure and symmetry, and you may want to make use of road paths to lay out your island. Also, using items such as the cars gives a more realistic look. Next we're going to be looking at Swampcore. This is a theme which relies heavily on lots of greenery. It's usually very overgrown and there's usually a lot of waterscaping to emphasize the swamp. You can also use paths to make it look more realistic. These islands tend to be slightly more cluttered and are quite often set during heavy rain. Next we're going to be looking at a mermaid theme. This theme relies very heavily on mermaid furniture, the shell collection, and is quite often set in summer. This theme also usually has a lot of statues as well, and it also has a lot of plants and flowers, in particularly brightly coloured ones such as pinks and blues. Next we have European town theme. This theme is mainly just elegant towns that represent that of the likes of France, Italy, Spain. These islands typically make use of the castle wall features as well as the storefront features. They also tend to have lots of paving, mainly stone paving or brick paving. Next we have Witchycore islands. These islands typically tend to be more cluttered. They also typically tend to be set in the evening time. Usually a lot of the items that are used in these islands include cooking items, maybe things that you might find in a witch's cottage, stuff like that. It's also not uncommon to have a little farm on this island, or you might even find an orchard. Next we have Mushcore. These islands are typically full of the mushroom items. They also tend to have a lot of the color red and the color white. They also tend to make lots of use of fences, plants and paving. You can see that in this island they have used a wood plank paving, which is very common of the Mushcore theme. Next we have Dark Academia. This is one of my personal favorite themes. It's very natural but also borrows a little bit from the European themes sometimes. It typically features colors that are like browns, greens, and it tends to be more natural. You can also find things like graveyard, candles, statues, and books. Next up we have Springcore, which typically has a lot of meadows, a lot of flowers and greenery everywhere. It also tends to have sometimes some farms or orchard areas. These islands are usually set in spring and they are typically very colourful and bright. Usually pastel colours are used more in the springtime. Next we have Wintercore. This theme is very similar to Springcore except it's set in winter, usually set during the snow time. And it usually gives off very cozy, warm, cute and comforting vibes. Typically, these islands will have a lot of cedar trees, a lot of greenery, maybe an ice rink, or maybe even a forest. Next up, we have Fairycore. These islands typically tend to be very bright, very colourful. They usually tend to have a lot of custom designs around. And they also tend to be very cluttered, using lots of the mystical items such as the glowing mushroom lamp, the moon, and the butterfly statues. They also tend to be set in spring or summer. Next we have a Western theme. This is pretty self-explanatory. It's basically a take on the desert theme that is of a more Western variety. It tends to have things such as meadows, windmills, cacti, cliffs and canyons for the more talented landscapers. This theme is absolutely beautiful and it's best set in fall. Next up we have the Moroccan theme. This theme is usually set in sort of summertime. This theme tends to have a lot of sand everywhere. It can even be set in the desert. There usually tends to be a lot of clutter around, rugs, stalls, tapestries, things like that. There's also usually a lot of pottery and things like that. The next theme that we have is a Halloween themed town. This is a very fun theme which usually relies on a lot of typical Halloween events such as pumpkin carving contests, apple bobbing, mazes and hay bales, things like that. It's also pretty common for people to set their islands out into neighbourhood areas as if for trick-or-treating. And these islands are of course best set in fall. Next up we have a Christmas themed island. This is very similar to the Halloween themed island, except it is set in winter and it's obviously themed around Christmas. There are lots of rare items that you can get at Christmas time that you can use on these islands. You can also set them during the snow and make them very festive, warm and cozy. Next we have the abandoned theme. This is a very common theme. It's usually sort of like a town that's been overgrown and nature has sort of reclaimed it. There's usually a lot of clutter and rubbish lying around to make the island feel more decaying. And these islands typically use a lot of dirt paths as well. Next up we have colour themed islands. This one is very self-explanatory. It's basically theming your entire island based off of a colour. It can be any colour. It could be orange, pink, yellow. And basically all you have to do is find items that match your colour, whether that be plants, flowers, house exteriors, or even villagers. You can get them to match your island's colour theme. And last but not least, we have Normcore. This theme is a little bit funny. It's basically just using items that were in the game when the game was originally released, before we had access to items, and basically just a very simple and relaxed way of decorating your island. This one's definitely great for beginners. It's very easy to do and it's very fun. So that was 25 island themes that you can use on your Animal Crossing New Horizons island. If you enjoyed or you found this helpful, please like, comment and subscribe. This video took me literally hours to make, and I'll see you guys all next time. Bye!